today's presentation. I hope you guys can see my screen, right?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, can.
Okay, great. Yeah. So quickly talking about the format for today's presentation. I mean, this topic, right? Given the diverse knowledge of this topic available in the online world, I'm sure everyone present today would be able to, share their insights and share their experience, and hence we can have a more collaborative discussion. So, as Mayank also mentioned, and probably reiterating, to have a collaborative discussion, I encourage everyone to share their thoughts. And I do have some pit stops and question slides in between during the presentation, which would definitely require your active participation. So I'm looking forward to that. And just from a perspective of mode of how we can communicate during the presentation so that we don't cut each other, you can either, if we are all in office, it would have been very easy to raise hands and, just stop the presentation. But right now, since we are virtually connected, I think you can use a chat window in the meeting to share answers, thoughts, or anything that you would want to bring up. And I'll keep a close eye on that and probably take a pause in between whenever, required, or any discussion can start off there. Cool. So let's get started. So what's on the agenda today, right? The agenda today is for us to first understand why we need prioritization, what to consider, what factors should we consider while doing prioritization or for planning a prioritization session. And then we'll go into how to go about doing prioritization. So various ways of achieving it, and we'll cover a few of those in depth, right? So let's take a look at the first bit, which is how to go about why there's a need for prioritization, right? And before we get into the actual need for prioritization, my first question to the audience starts from why or what sort of makes product development successful. So anything that comes to our mind when we talk about how can we make product development successful. Any thoughts, any guesses?
A good team.
Okay, good team.
End user driven decisions.
Okay. Anything else?
A good planning.
Solving a particular problem and also being aware or exceeding the competition.
Right. Yeah. I guess all of these points are valid. So if we, have to have a quick look at what are different factors, and again, this is more of a subset, not an exhaustive list, but something that I have put together is like a cross-functional team, well-defined product vision, scalable tech stack, best practices that we follow or we should follow, having regular rhythms within the team to make sure everyone is synced with the updates and what needs to be done and what needs to be, deprioritized at certain point of time. Having a good deployment strategy, so whatever we are building is taken to the market as soon as possible. And obviously at the centerpiece, as I've put it there, which is not just an important part of making the product development successful, but also making the product itself successful, is the healthy backlog, right? So let's deep dive a little more into backlog and what actually does a backlog mean. So if we have to, put it in layman terms, backlog is nothing but an ordered list of product or project requirements, depending on the context of what we are dealing with. Typically, it's said that a backlog should be deep, right? Now, deep here doesn't just mean the depth and breadth of the scope. Yes, depth and breadth of the scope matters, but deep here essentially is also an acronym. And let's look at what the deep acronym stands for, right? The deep acronym, D means detailed appropriately. So requirements can be of multiple types. It can be functional, it can be technical. But whatever those requirements are, the requirements should be well thought through and detailed enough for anyone in the team to easily understand. That is how the requirements would be very easily understood by everyone in the team, and at the same time implemented in the exact shape and size that the client or the user is expecting. The other aspect of deep is estimated. Now, estimation can be anything, right? We can have points, we can have hours, we can have t-shirt size. But whatever the estimate is, it should give a fair idea of the effort involved. At the end of the day, we do estimation so that we know what the effort is to take this particular thing from inception stage to live so that the users can end up using it, right? The third aspect of deep backlog is emergent. Now, in agile ecosystem, we know that the requirements keep changing. And if we are following a Scrum model, anything outside the scope of the current sprint or outside the purview of the current sprint is something that is by default expected to change in an agile world. So given that the requirements will always be evolving, it's always important to keep track of these changes, these evolving requirements, document them, and then we ourselves evolve our backlog over time so that we are not left behind, and then the world sort of moves on and the competitors move on with new features. So that is very important, that a backlog should be emergent. And the fourth aspect of a deep backlog is a prioritized backlog. So anything that we pick, any requirement that we pick needs to be prioritized based on something that adds value to the business and to the end user. And that's where having a backlog, which is just a backlog with multiple requirements, tasks in there, and team starts working on it, doesn't really make sense. And that's why we see there's a very high importance to the concept deep that everyone should adhere to when it comes to backlog. And one common and very important aspect of this deep backlog is prioritized. So now let's look at some interesting things called as Pareto principle. I'm sure everyone, most of you know it, what a Pareto principle means. So the Pareto principle states that 80% of effects come from 20% of causes. Now, if we have to apply this to agile software development, we can translate it in such a way that 80% of product value would be derived from 20% of backlog items, right? That obviously doesn't mean that we don't deliver the remaining 80% of the backlog items, because those would still be required to complete the user journey. But in principle, how do we identify what this magical 20% backlog would be, so that we provide that 80% value and thereby have satisfied and happy customers and users at the end of the day, right? So we've understood hence the need of prioritization, and let's move forward to look at a few other aspects related to prioritization. So the next aspect, as we discussed in the agenda, is what to consider while doing prioritization. And before I jump into any further illustration, I want to understand from the audience here if we can get some of the factors that we as a group feel would be very important when we are doing any prioritization exercise. Any thoughts?
Time to market functionalities, sometimes compliances.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone else?
Urgency from client, maybe.
So the time aspect, sure.
The business value of a particular feature.
Right. What is the value added to the business as well as the end user sometimes? Yeah.
Cost.
Absolutely. So what is the cost of getting this out? The money, the time, everything relates to the cost at the end of the day. Yes.
Issues on the live environment, maybe.
Right. Okay.
Dependencies.
So risk involved, dependencies, right? Okay. Cool. So yeah, that's quite a good exhaustive list of what we discussed as prioritization factors. So I have got nothing different from what we already spoke about, but just quickly, glancing through and reiterating. Again, it's not an exhaustive list as I mentioned earlier, but just something that we should all be watchful about when we are planning for any prioritization session. So starting with dependencies. So we might be working in a team which has multiple sub teams involved, or which is dealing with multiple features, or which is spread across different locations, thereby creating a lot and different types of dependencies. So something the team should be watchful about when we are, getting into prioritization. Another aspect to consider is resources. So there might be availability of tools, testing devices, which might, hamper at some point of time any like life cycle of any feature that we are planning to do, but the unavailability of resources might impact its timeline. So something which we should consider while we are prioritizing something at a given point of time. Risk. So risk and value sort of go hand in hand. Sometimes we think of value when we only think of value when we are prioritizing. So customer satisfaction, how would the end user be happy? Will they become our advocates for us to get the word of mouth and move the product forward to multiple different audience? But sometimes we also need to look at risk. So value is like a mirror or the other side of the same coin for risk, where if we are deprioritizing something, obviously we know what value we are losing, but we also need to look at the risk of not having that particular feature or aspect in our product. So there might be opportunity cost involved, which might not necessarily translate to a negative of value. It might be a lot more than lost value, right? So something which the team should be watchful about. Cost, I think, as Vineet mentioned, and cost can be in terms of money as well as time. So we spend a lot of time in brainstorming and analyzing something which will never make to the market, and it was just an idea which could not actually materialize into a software. So it's also a lost time. In other words, a cost to the whole business, and obviously money involved in getting the software up and running is another form of cost, which happens to be a prioritization factor. Compliance, right? I mean, compliance is something that we always need to look at and respect, because we end up building a fantastic product which has a lot of features. The users are loving it, but if there is some issue with respect to data compliance, user personal data compliance and things like that, then it becomes very difficult, and it's just going to lose a lot of reputation and rapport that it has built in the market. Value we already covered, and knowledge gain. So apart from the other factors, this factor is a little different, because the other factors are more focused on user and how the product will shape. But at the same time, it's very important to build that knowledge, expertise, the domain expertise in the business line of things that we are operating, so that we don't just become another player in the market, but we also become experts, which people look forward to. And an easy example can be any player in the market who has established their name so much that that they just don't need to do a lot of marketing when it comes to propagating or pushing their product, right? So these are different prioritization factors. Again, the applicability and weightage of these factors might vary depending on the context of the situation and the business landscape. But yeah, it's something that I put together to understand how we can go about considering factors for prioritization. So now that we have done looking at prioritization factors, let's do a small exercise to see how much we can easily relate to. So I have a few examples put here, and I'll need the help from audience to just understand and compare a couple of situations that will come on our screen, and see what actually as a group we would go ahead and prioritize. Again, there is no right and wrong answer here, because everyone would have their own perspective, but I think it's more about looking at those perspectives and see, again, considering those factors which we saw in the previous slide. Let's keep them in principle, and then think about, out of these two situations, what is something that we will go ahead and prioritize first. So the first one is reduce time by 50% to process subscription payments. and develop a user interface upfront instead of doing it along with the rest of its functionality. So maybe we can use the chat window to respond one or two, depending on what we think is going to be the priority for the team. So if you think the left-hand side one is the priority, we can respond one. And if you think the right-hand side one is the priority, we can respond two. Okay. I see a lot of ones. Anand Pal has mentioned something. One, because two essentially means horizontal slicing. That's right. Okay, I think that's perfect. So I didn't see anyone actually mentioning the second scenario. So I guess it's safe to assume that we are all in sync with what are the different prioritizing factors, and it's quite clear that out of these two scenarios, the first one is something that's going to impact the end user experience directly, thereby making it a priority for us rather than developing something which is not going to be implemented immediately for a functionality. Let's look at a few other examples which would not be as straightforward as this, maybe some complex comparison. So improving experience for features which have low user adoption and dashboard metrics extracted from user feedback and competitor analysis. So what do we think would be the priority in between these two? Okay. A lot of tools coming in again. Yep, and I can definitely say that you all are right. So Zenobia has mentioned some comments. If the metrics help business take better decisions than two, absolutely. That is something as a thought process would go into prioritizing these. And I feel the exact same thing, that improving experience for features which have low user adoption can definitely come in later because it already has user adoption. Another perspective of looking at this would be, if those features are really important to the business, then why they have low user adoption, and thereby we can investigate and then prioritize some other features or feature changes that would improve that experience, thereby increasing the user adoption. But at this point of time, based on the understanding of two scenarios, it definitely makes sense for the dashboard metrics to be prioritized. Another quick example. So adding support for Facebook single sign-on login and add in-app purchases option for a subscription-based application. So this is very tricky. What do you folks think about this one? So if monetization is the goal, then second, we see a lot of ones coming in. Okay, cool. So here actually I went ahead with the second one as a priority, and someone has said business is monetization. Exactly what I thought. Where if so the scenario that I thought was more of a live product which is currently used by a good set of users. Now, given that I would already have means of login, and also I would have already got some means of receiving payment, but it might not be in-app, right? So if I want to monetize my business further by giving more options from a subscription point of view, then my priority will more be around developing in-app purchases option and giving that flexibility to the end user. Whereas if I am content with what purchase options I have with respect to my application, and I'm more focused on getting more users onboarded and increase the adoption, as someone suggested there, Animesh, I think, then I'll add for Facebook and maybe explore a few more single sign-on login. The other aspect I will also think about is which is a low-lying low-hanging fruit. So if I already have a sprint which is heavily loaded with big features, and Facebook single sign-on is going to be very straightforward and simple to implement, then I'll obviously go with that one above in-app purchases, which might be a lot more complex than just single sign-on, right? So yeah, that one. One more example we'll take, and then we'll move to the next segment of the presentation. So this one is very tricky, and both might again look to be very important. So feature change pertaining to GDPR norms in live product versus adding support for users to use their credit cards for making payments. So what do you guys think is priority here? So one, compliance takes the priority. One, it can cause legal issues. Okay, I see one person has voted for second one, which is again a fair point. Yes, cool. A lot of ones, and yes, I've sort of gone with the majority here. Like I said, both issues or both tasks at hand could be very tricky and high priority, because GDPR suggests that data protection is the utmost priority, and it might get our product into legal issues. So yes, that obviously will take 0.0 priority even before the first priority. And adding support for users to use their credit cards would also be important, because we just discussed in the previous point that monetization aspect for business would also be very important. But just considering the the severity aspect of both, I think the first one would take priority, and yes, if the second one, as Zenobia mentioned, would be a quicker win, we can prioritize it along with a few other sprint items like a low-hanging fruit or something like that, right? Okay. I think there was a really good discussion. Thank you so much, everyone, for collaborating and making this exercise interesting. Now, let's move to the next segment of the presentation, which is how to go about doing prioritization. So why we have all gathered here, right? To understand what are the different prioritization techniques, and to understand a few of them closely and look at how they can be performed, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of looking at those, right? So I referred a lot of web articles, as we usually do before putting together any webinar, and I came across this really interesting concept on one of the websites where they had put these prioritization techniques in form of periodic table. I didn't want to replicate the exact thing, but I just took that idea and created a format of myself. And while I was going through different prioritization techniques that are out there, I realized that there are some base prioritization techniques, and then people, depending on how they want to use it and how they want to apply it, have combined a few and created some prioritization techniques, thereby increasing the number of prioritization techniques to a really high number. So in my view, and just to separate a few prioritization techniques from each other, I have put together this list, which is again not an exhaustive one, but I felt these are some distinctive ways of prioritizing requirements, and these ways or these techniques can be they might vary based on some aspects like what is the crowd or what is the group of people involved in the prioritization, whether they are external or internal. And internal and external here means external, which is more user and consumer side, and internal is internal team. It can be the business folks, it can be the people who are developing it, and so on and so forth, right? Another aspect of how we can look at these prioritization techniques vary from each other is the method of use, which is either quantitative or qualitative. And keeping these few aspects in mind, I have further split these prioritization techniques into 4 types. The first one being categorical. So as the name suggests, involves putting requirements into different buckets. So let's say, for example, from the grid, we take feature bucket, and something which most of us might be using very widely, where we have a list of features at hand, and we have a discussion with the business to understand what are the must-have features, what are good to have, and what are something that can be done at a later stage. I've seen some teams also get creative with creating buckets. Like for example, if it's a fixed scope project, we can have phase 2 as a bucket. And if we have vision and transparency around what's going to happen a year later, then we can have phase 3, phase 4, and so on. So we can really get creative with what buckets we create. But at the end of the day, it's nothing but putting requirements into different buckets and categorizing them so that we can deal with some priority aspects first, and then move on to picking up few things which are good to have. The second type which I have segregated is financial, and again, as the name suggests, it has some of the other financial aspects associated to it. So let's take an example of value versus risk from the grid. So I did touch upon something about value versus risk in the prioritizing factor slide, but talking about it more in detail, where a feature might have value, a certain value associated to it, which an end user perceives, and at the same time, not having that feature might carry a risk from a perspective of, again, end user or business, both. So it's very important to marry these two factors together and then create some sort of a ratio or a factor out of it, which will help the whole team prioritize which feature or which story gets picked up first and which gets picked up later, right? So financial type is that. The third one is ranking based, and as again the name suggests, it's plain pure ranking or ordering things one after the other. So we'll take an example of stack ranking, which essentially deals with putting numbers across features, starting with 1, ending with the number of features that we have for prioritization. And we'll also be touching upon the specifics and details of stack ranking in further slides. The final category or the final type that I have carved out here is mathematical. Sometimes it would be difficult and confusing to segregate financial and mathematical separately because both have some sort of maths involved. But what I've done here is anything that has financial aspect I've kept under financial, and mathematical will be still a lot quantitative in nature, but at the same time, would have some sort of calculation and no aspect of financial properties involved here. So example can be relative weight. So as a team, if you are prioritizing a list of 20 features, then we might come up with, let's say, 5 factors that matter to us out of a set of factors which we have thought about, and then assign some weights to these factors. So depending on the business context, depending on the product positioning and things like that, we can give 20%, 30%, and so on and so forth. Finally, the spectrum of 100% divided across factors, and then ask the group of people who are prioritizing to assign some value to every factor for every feature that we are prioritizing. And at the end of the day, we do a relative weight measure for every factor, and then just sort it based on descending order to see what feature carries the highest relative weight and what does not. And thereby, again, we get a prioritized list of features that the team can start looking at. So any questions, any thoughts around? Maybe I would have missed something that you would want to add. So anything before we move on to specifics and in-depth discussion about few of the prioritization techniques. Anyone wants to add anything? Okay, great. So I'll take that as a no. Let's move on to looking at a few prioritization techniques more closely. I've tried to pick one prioritization technique from every type that I have classified here. And I'll start with, I think, everyone's favorite, which is Moscow. Moscow, as the name suggests, it is nothing but creating 4 simple categories and putting whatever we are prioritizing, be it features, stories, putting them into those categories so that we can have a better version of our backlog. It is purely qualitative in nature. All it needs is 4 buckets and ways of moving things around, like I mentioned. So either a whiteboard where we draw columns, or if we are in a virtual world like today, then we can have some sort of a Trello board or something on Jira, or any tool rather. Maybe do it on an Excel with 4 columns, and have an ability of moving things around from one column, one bucket to the other. Moscow, in principle, targets that at the end of the exercise, it should bring clarity and transparency around what's important in the near future and what can be dealt with at a later stage. And that's the underlying principle of Moscow prioritization technique. So whenever we put things into different buckets, which is a must have, could have, won't have, at the end of this exercise, the whole team is completely clear about what is something which is a must have, which needs to be done immediately, whereas what is something which is not going to help us in the immediate future, and something really for the far-fetched future, and it's going to be mostly in won't have bucket, right? So let's look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of using Moscow as a technique. So as I just discussed, it's very simple to use and gives us quick results. So it might so happen that there is not a lot of time at hand for the team when they are deciding to do prioritization, and all we need is him to bring in some clarity about the priorities amongst features. So let's take an example where if we are at an inception stage where requirements are not completely detailed out, but everyone on the team has a fair idea of what are the different features at a high level involved. So in these particular situations, Moscow is something that can be used to decipher what the team should be concentrating on. And I'd like to quote something that Stephen Covey has said, that the main thing is to keep the main thing, right? And that is exactly what Moscow prioritization techniques helps us do. It basically helps us identify what is the main thing and keeps the team focused on it. And while we are, exploring a few other things which can again become the main thing for the future. So that is something that, I think about the Moscow technique. Now, looking at some of the disadvantages of Moscow, it lacks consistency, right? So what happens is we are putting features or stories in different buckets, but there might be a situation where there are dependencies, and dependencies might unnecessarily pull few features which are really could have or should have, essentially good to have, but because few must have features are dependent on those features, they also need to become must have. Or someone might mistakenly still put it in could have or should have, and then when the team starts working on it, they would hit a roadblock immediately because something which was really a dependency has not been taken care of, and there was a lack of bigger picture context here. So it sort of lacks some consistency in the way it is structured. And also, if we look at it, it's not really the most effective way of prioritizing, meaning it won't give you the exact priority order. It needs to be paired with something like a stack ranking or any ranking mechanism, because let's say we have 20 features at hand and the group ends up putting 7 or 8 of those into must have. Obviously the team can't start working on all 8 features immediately. Even if we have the capacity and bandwidth to pick up those features, it's going to take some time to understand the dependencies inside of these features, analyze them through and through, and then and only then pragmatically start looking at what an MVP looks like and things like that. I don't want to divulge into those terms for now because it doesn't really come into an aspect as prioritization, but something which we would need for effectively using Moscow as a technique for prioritization.
Yeah. Okay. So if client adds a lot of cards in must-haves, will that be a good point to then add must-have as another bucket where they can further filter?
Right, exactly, right. I mean, must have can get must have, and then won't have can get again phase 2, phase 3, and so on. So we can obviously get creative, but even then we might run into a situation where out of 8 must have, we end up putting 5 into must have, right? So we'll still require some sort of ranking mechanism or some sort of ordering mechanism at the end of the day for the team to understand out of these 5 really must have, or you can call it anything, what is that to be emphasized and focused on day one, and what comes in a little later. So that's essentially why I mentioned Moscow technique might need some sort of pairing for exact priority order. Or cool. Okay. Given that we have, so just give me 1 second. Okay, I see someone has pinged something. So there would also be need to be some time frame when we would ideally revisit these buckets, and then should can become a must. Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely right. Rightly pointed out. And even then, we probably need to relook at the whole prioritization after a certain time frame and redo the buckets and move things around again at a certain time interval. That's right. Okay. So let's move on to looking at the next prioritization technique that I have for us today, which is the $100 test. Now, the $100 test, as the name suggests, is it's one of the many prioritization games out there, and like honestly speaking, it's very easy and fun to be part of. So in this technique, what happens is you're a group of people, usually acting as customers or users, or if you are able to get the actual users to do this, then nothing like that. But it can also be a role play of a few of the team members from diverse background, development, business, etc., coming together as a group of users and are given a certain but limited budget, and all they are asked to do is allocate this budget across various features or streams that they feel are important or they are value driven, right? And what this would do is at the end of the activity, we would have a list of features and the respective spend that the customer group or the user group would be interested to make in order to get them up and running or in order to be able to use those features. So it sort of gives us a outlook from a perspective of user, and at the same time it also gives us an aspect of what is the kind of cost involved or what is the kind of price the user would be ready to pay when it comes to prioritizing this particular feature, right? So let's look at some of its advantages and disadvantages. It is a very widely and commonly used technique, again, just like Moscow. Sometimes, it is called differently in different cultures of the world. So few people call it monopoly, few people call it 100-point method. Few people use it for a completely different sort of a prioritization by calling it priority or trade-off sliders, where you have few factors that you are going to do a trade-off between, and then essentially you have a budget that you allocate to different factors, thereby again nothing but prioritizing what matters to you and what doesn't really matter to you. Another advantage I see is it sort of strikes a balance between value and cost, because the group of people who are acting as users now have to think of what price they are ready to pay for utilizing or getting this feature, and at the same time it also reduces the conflict of interest from different kinds of users. So if we are able to create a group of different of users who are resembling different personas or different kinds of users of the application, then it's very easy because it's very productive, because every type of user might have their own requirements, but the budget that they get as a group is a collective and a fixed budget, right? So they have to brainstorm amongst themselves and then come to a consensus before allocating the budget to any feature, thereby reducing the effort on our side of prioritizing between which users priority should I actually consider first. So what we get at the end of this exercise is a collectively prioritized list of backlog items, which is really helpful. On the contrary, because we are coming to a consensus and spending a lot of time, it obviously it is time consuming. It might take hours, days, depending on again the diversity of the group and the context of what we are prioritizing. And it's not as straightforward as it looks like, to be honest. It's very complex, and I'll tell you how. Let's say there are 10 features that we are prioritizing, and we are obviously giving $100 to the set of users. They can be really smart and just give $10 to every feature, right? And even if it's fair for them to do that, it's not really going to help us prioritize anything. That's why this particular technique needs to have some well-articulated rules and proper denominations in place so that we get what we want out of this exercise, where no, for example, no feature can get the same budget. So $100 can be in denomination such that there's only one $10 note, or there's only one $20 note, or something like that, where we add those complexities and rules to make the game not just interesting but also productive at the end of the exercise. So that's more about the $100 test. Anyone has anything to add? Any questions around this? Okay, cool. I'll take that as a no. So let's move on to the next technique which I have, and is very straightforward from the ranking-based type of prioritizing techniques, and it's usually called stack ranking. People might call it purely just ranking, but as the name suggests, it's nothing but a plain vanilla flavored way of prioritizing things. So as a group or as an individual, it can depend on the context of the project, but you are given a list of features, stories, tasks again, and you're asked to basically scrutinize them relatively with each other, thereby creating an ordered list of requirements. Now, the end goal of this technique is to produce a list which can be referred to as a source of truth throughout the project. Now, this particular technique might sound really effective, but might also get clumsy when you're talking about prioritizing 100 things. You will obviously don't want to scrutinize 100 things relatively with the remaining 99, every feature with the remaining 99 things, and then come to a conclusion that this is rank 1 and this is rank 100 and so on and so forth, which is going to take a lot of time. So stack ranking as a technique usually is used in combination with something like a qualitative technique, where you do a first round of prioritization by, let's say, creating buckets, and then you use stack ranking to rank the requirements or features amongst a particular category by scrutinizing them with the ones that are there in that bucket, thereby finally creating a very like a really effective way of prioritizing things on the backlog, right? So let's look at some advantages and disadvantages of stack ranking. I might have already spoken about a few, but yes, it's most accurate. So it not just gives you relative ranking because you're scrutinizing one feature versus the other, but it avoids any confusion, because once you publish the ranks, everyone knows that this is something that needs to be picked first versus second versus so on. Now, some ground rules that you can set for this stack ranking technique, and that's why it also offers a clear separation, is that you can have only one number one, right? I've seen people use stack ranking and do a ranking based on what the group of people feel, and then because we end up not having majority, what we do is put 2 items on rank 1 and then 3 items on rank 2, so on and so forth. I've also seen people doing something like this, where they prioritize 10 features. They did 1 to 10 very diligently, but then suddenly an 11th feature came into existence, and the business comes back and says that this is the most important one. And now, instead of doing a reprioritization, what they do is put that as rank 0. I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? We don't have a rank 0. It is something that's always going to become number 1, and everything else moves further. So as long as we diligently use this particular prioritization technique, it will give us clear separation of priorities amongst features. Some disadvantages of this particular prioritization technique is that it is less user focused, because many a times what would happen is there are internal stakeholders who are either doing this prioritization, or there's a product manager or a group of product people sitting together deriving a lot of conversation points from their conversations with internal stakeholders or business stakeholders, and then making decision in terms of, this is something that is rank 1 and that is something that is rank 2, thereby losing out user focus at times. And also it might be opinion based, where some SMEs or key people in the business side might suddenly come and say that this is something that is very important, and thereby the team starts immediately working on it, considering that as rank 1. So many a times, because the user focus is lost, the ranking that we do might be very opinion based. And that's why pairing this particular technique with some other technique, which is making it first a lot more qualitative segregation, and then even if it's an opinion based ranking, it's fine, because all we are doing is still implementing must have in just the order of the expert opinion from key stakeholders. So it's still fine. But if we just go with stack ranking as an option, then we might end up being in a situation where we have built something which is not really useful for the end user, because it was completely opinion based on some of the key stakeholders. So yeah, that's about Speedboat. And the last technique that I have is, sorry, that was about stack ranking, beg your pardon. And the last prioritizing technique I have is Speedboat. So this is a very fun and innovative way of prioritizing things. It's another prioritization game which can either involve real users of the software, or again we can have diverse people playing the role of users or customers. So in this technique, the method is like, there are a group of users who are presented with certain questionnaires. Now the idea of this questionnaire is to decipher a few things from user output, user feedback. So the first goal, or rather the first thing that we do in the Speedboat exercise, is to understand what are the user goals and objectives, right? Sorry, excuse me for the diagram that I have used might not look like a speedboat, but something which was easily available and more resembling to the format that is used. So the tree you see here is nothing but where the user wants to reach, and thereby the goals that the user would set. And to achieve these goals, there might be some accelerators that might help the user through this journey to get to their goals. So we document and understand the goals and accelerators from the user. But what's more important to understand from this particular technique is the obstacles and anchors that the user feels about the particular journey. So obstacles might mean some missing features which is depriving users of achieving their goals. So maybe something we have thought of a user journey, we have implemented it, but the user is not really able to make the most out of it because of a missing thing. Like for example, in the scenario we saw option of giving credit card for payment, and there might be people who are only purchasing things using credit card. So that's an obstacle for a user to actually use our service, thereby becoming a problem. And that's how that obstacle will get highlighted when we interview that user by putting that questionnaire forward. Similarly, anchors might be things which are user experience or user journey related. So we might already have some features, but maybe they are not really visible enough, or they are not clear enough to the user, or they are completely in a different user journey versus where they actually should be, thereby slowing down the whole user journey or the process of user getting to their goal. And that's why these anchors need to be identified as soon as possible and cleared, so that the user is not taken back from using the application and getting to what they're trying to achieve from the application or software. So speedboat usually is widely used as a discovery technique, to be honest, but it can also be used as a prioritization technique, and it really comes up with wonderful results. This prioritization technique can be used for a live product, which wants to revamp their whole end user experience, and goes about interviewing few of the users to understand these 4 particular aspects: objectives, accelerators, anchors, and obstacles. Cool. So let's quickly look at the advantages and disadvantages of this particular prioritization technique. As we saw the gamification aspect of this thing. So while I was describing, you guys would have felt that there's a lot of things involved when it comes to role playing or acting as a user to carve out a few things which are going to hold me back or which are going to help me get to my target. So it's a very collaborative and innovative way of finding the product gaps and identifying the key areas to work with. And also, it's nothing but a sounding board. So what essentially I mean by sounding board is that the user actually feels that their pain points are they're heard, and then they're addressed when we start working on things which get prioritized from this particular technique. So it sort of helps user relate very easily and naturally the application, and they know that the team who is working on this particular application is being a sounding board to their thoughts and wishes. Some disadvantages of this particular technique is it sort of has a contextual usage, right? I mean, it has a certain level of dependency involved in terms of where it can be used. So if you ask me, it can be used for a new product or someone who is trying to diversify into a new segment altogether, then the answer might be no, because you don't have a existing user base. You can still use this technique as a discovery, which I mentioned earlier, but for prioritizing requirements, it might not be helpful because you don't have a user base which you can easily relate to. Even if you're doing a role play, you might not really understand what different user personas needs are unless that discovery has really happened very well, right? So contextual usage of this particular technique, makes it not so popular technique, and it's also not holistic. So what happens is it only focuses, because it's sounding board for the users, it only focuses on finding out the user's pain points and what they're actually looking for in terms of goals, but it does not take into aspect the other prioritization factors, which is value add or profits, financial aspects, which probably are going to be the ones which come from business, and thereby the output of this particular technique might not translate directly into product backlog, thereby making this whole, even if it's a fun exercise to do, it might as well happen that we did this exercise, but we did not utilize everything that got prioritized as part of this exercise. So that's why it's not very holistic. It's more end user focused, but not internal at all. So that's more about Speedboat, and essentially wraps up the 4 prioritization techniques that I was going to talk in detail. And a quick time check, we are at 1 o'clock. So if we have a few minutes, then we can go through some scenarios that I've created similar to what we did with prioritization factors. And we can see which technique is suitable, or sort of which type of techniques can be used in particular scenarios, right? Can we continue for another 5 minutes, Mayank?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool.
Questions, if you want to just have a look at those.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good idea. So I'm just gonna go back to the type of prioritization techniques. Like I said, we have categorical, where you're creating multiple buckets and putting things across buckets. It can be feature bucket, Kano model, Moscow, or priority poker. You have financial, where some sort of financial aspect is involved, and you have to consider those aspects when you're prioritizing things. Ranking based is simply ranking based on some understanding or context, but creating an ordered list of things. And then mathematical is something which does not have financial aspects, but has a lot of calculations involved to reach to a stage where we have prioritized requirements, right? So these are the 4 types. Any questions before we move on to the exercise? Okay, cool. So let's take a look at the first scenario which I have here.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So let's take an example of an app which is focused on enhancing creativity and storytelling amongst kids. So one concept which I have recently worked with is something called stop motion animation, where what you do is take real life static objects, essentially toys for kids, and then put them into life by creating, taking multiple pictures of them and putting through a stop motion animation video to, enhance creativity and storytelling for kids. So if we are thinking of, building this kind of a product from scratch, generally what is the type of prioritization technique we might be more inclined to? And again, there is no right or wrong answer here, but just perspectives that we would want to hear from the group. Any thoughts? Anyone? We can type as well as just speak out. That's totally fine.
We can actually go, I think there'll be a combination of couple of stuff. It is not just one, it can be categorical plus something like a financial.
Right. Okay, that's right. So Animesh has also mentioned something on the chat. He says financial aspect to determine the value. Okay. We can also, talk about a few aspects which will absolutely not matter in some particular case, right? For example, we are talking about a kids app. So I think if I was someone who is putting together this kids app, what I would be the most focused on is the user experience, because we are talking about people who are like 2-3-year-old to 10-year-old, who their attention span is so less that they might lose the interest of using the application within a blink of an eye. So if I want to make my application a lot more end user focused, I will end up using some techniques which give me that kind of a insight into like bringing the end users or role playing end users together, and then looking at how and why we have to build a certain features versus the rest of the features. Let's take one more example. So let's say we are feedback is very important, right, for every organization, for every employee. So as an organization, if we decide to create an internal feedback application, so it's essentially putting together an application which will help workforce share feedback and appreciate each other, right? I mean, in the context of urgency, we many a times miss out on appreciating each other, and feedback is not just negative feedback, it's also positive feedback. So if we have to create some sort of application which helps organization streamline this process, let's try and answer it differently, where what is the type of prioritization technique which we definitely won't use in this particular scenario? Any thoughts?
Can you switch back to that table once when you had these 4 categories?
Yeah, sure.
If you can just copy and bring that slide down, then it will be easy to just switch to the other one and see.
Absolutely. Yeah, got it. Yes. So probably share my perspective on the previous use case. Like if we are talking about an internal application, right, we are definitely not immediately, unless that application comes to a stage where it's beating all the applications out there by competitors in that particular business. I would not be really looking at incentivizing this particular application, right, or making some money out of it. So something which I'll definitely not use is a financial type of prioritization in this particular case. I'll more probably be looking at, or even mathematically, because I don't want to complicate too many things, right? It's a simple application which is going to help us share feedback with each other. Something which is, context-based, categorical, or, ranking-based on end user feedback. So something like that, which I would end up using. But any other thoughts anyone has before we move to the final slide? Okay.
No, I think you explained well. Thanks for that.
Okay, sure. Cool. I just have a couple of more scenarios. The first one is, let's say, and this is not pertaining to software projects anymore. It's just a random example out there, but very interesting to have a conversation on. So if Apple wants to get into the video conferencing space, so Apple already is known for its iPhones and iPads and MacBooks. But what if they want to completely diversify into another product segment and get into video conferencing space? What sort of prioritization technique or discovery technique you feel they should be, more reliant to? And knowing Apple based on how they really perform or how they really look at the market. Any thoughts around that? Right, someone is saying something, I think.
I think Apple as a company, they are more focused on the user experience a lot, but they also ensure that they like earn a lot of money from whatever product they come out with.
Okay.
Definitely categorical. Sorry, they'll go with the first option. Is what I think, because user experiences has always been their forte.
Okay, correct. I see Zenobia has also mentioned financial and categorical, similar to what Vineet said. I have a contrary viewpoint. Considering Apple, they launch products or services for, considering only affluent, right? They are not someone like Samsung who will get into a segment of phones which are for any user segment, right? I mean, they have started recently doing it, but just considering the traditional Apple, would they be actually concerned about thinking of financial models for prioritization?
They always do. Now they'll not even have batteries in iPhones. So one by one, if you see their business model, they started charging for all the accessories and started a lot more. So I think they're always focused on how can they make money, even if the smallest bit that product that they launch or any service.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
That's just my reading of the market or based on the product launches that they have done.
Okay. No, that's a good viewpoint. I would have completely missed that. But thanks to bring that up to me. Cool. Okay. Final scenario, some application which I think everyone on the call would be widely using these days, right? BigBasket, essentially because we are not allowed to go outside. But we have heard of a recent news where Amazon and BigBasket are, trying to get into alcohol delivery space in India. So when BigBasket would actually be thinking about getting into the alcohol delivery space, what sort of, type of prioritizing technique or thought process they would be putting together? I mean, one hint, or rather my perspective, which I can share is something to do with financial, obviously, because given so much $1 billion worth of market out there for alcohol in India, and becoming the pioneers, or like they say, first mover advantage of getting into alcohol delivery space with so much of ease of ordering online. I think definitely like a financial model or mathematical model is something they would obviously have in their mind, thinking of what sort of profits they can make, right? Also, they might use some sort of ranking amongst the products that they want to feature on their product portfolio, by starting with the things which are usually most demanded versus things which are used by just the premium payers in the market, right? So that is something that we can probably think of when we are looking at this particular use case. Yeah, financial plus ranking, exactly. Zenobia has commented that. Okay, so that's pretty much about it for today's presentation. We can take questions if there are any, or the forum is open for discussion, and if not, we can also close the presentation. So any questions anyone has?
I think Zenobia had one of the questions earlier. Would this work for cross product needs too?
So
Okay.
that is around the speedboat technique.
Okay. Yeah, can you emphasize? I think I would have missed that out. Sorry for that. Can you emphasize a little more, Zenobia?
Sure. So while we spoke about the speedboat technique and we spoke about anchors and obstacles, etc., I was just wondering if there are cross-product kind of prioritization needs that come across. Would this particular technique be able to engage those as well?
So cross product, as in any example you can give,
So,
just for my understanding. Yeah.
So, say for instance, there is a product that talks to multiple other products for needs, or caters to multiple other products as a base product or something like that. In
Okay.
that case, there can be requirements coming from multiple segments of its branches of products, if I may put it so. In that case, while the standalone product also accommodates its all individual needs, there can be needs from its other branch products also to be catered to, which
Right.
can arise at any point in time. So I'm just wondering if this method can deal with those.
I think so. I mean, in the whole gamut of looking these products together, because that's a bundled experience, which is provided to the user, I think it's worth exploring. One thing which I could definitely think of when you were explaining that scenario is, let's say, if a particular underlying product, which is something which we are currently using as an outsourced third-party application, is becoming an anchor or an obstacle, then the company might think of building something in-house which can cater to their exact needs, and thereby again translating into product requirements. But again, it's not going to be prioritization. I think it will be more to doing speedboat for the discovery rather than a prioritization.
True.
Yeah, but that's an interesting aspect.
Thanks.
Any other question, anyone?
Yeah, suppose when we are launching a product or when doing a discovery workshop, that time we might select a prioritization technique, but 6 months down the line, is it okay to change and look at some other prioritization techniques, or because the client is well aligned with the prioritization technique which was used during workshop or inception or the product launch, it will be risky to change things, or because you'll have to make them aware of different prioritization techniques and the benefits of it before the switch.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. I can share my thoughts on that, and everyone, I mean, anyone else who wants to share, they can also share their thoughts. But like if we really look at timeline perspective, right here, 6 months down the line, the factors that go into prioritization might also have changed, or at least the weightage of every factor might have changed. So maybe depending on the factors, we might have chosen a particular prioritization technique at the beginning, or a discovery technique at the beginning, but later on it might not be relevant at all. So in my view, I would go with a change in prioritization, and sort of not at the same time not create a lot of flux for the client. Try and think of a prioritization technique which will still help solve the purpose, but at the same time would not be a huge learning curve for the team and the client. Something which is a midway sort of an approach.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Any other questions? Cool. Then I think that's pretty much for today's presentation. Thank you so